I apologize. My device cut off on me. But as I was saying, the second part of what I perceived or gleaned from what I'd seen was people are so quick to get offended without taking into consideration that your perspective of situation or circumstance is uniquely your own. Not only is each person an individual, we see and perceive everything from our individual point of view, based on our individual, unique experiences. But also when you're talking about different cultures or lifestyles, what is common practice for one or esteemed in one may not be in another. And so it's always best to, instead of getting offended or jumping to any assumptions, to ask questions, talk about it, get a grasp on what different things may mean to different people. Because one of the things about being a military brat growing up and traveling so much, we have wanderlust. We've traveled every year, every 3 years, we were moving to another city, state, you name it. And across continents, literally. So we were always the new people, no matter where we were, no matter what school I went to, etc. And every place within our country or within our little worlds, many ecosystems, microcosms of their own, and they have their own way of doing things, their own perceptions, their own ideologies and idiosyncrasies, that you have to kind of learn to be somewhat of a chameleon, especially if you travel a lot, to just kind of go with the flow of where you are, and don't do anything or say anything until you've had a chance to get a feel for the ebbs and flows of that particular location. And then each individual within that, they may have that overarching societal viewpoint, but then each person has their own particular perspective within that. And so we're in a time and in a world where everybody is incensed about everything. Everybody says, everybody thinks, everybody feels, everybody does. And it is never my intention, never has been, never will be. It's not my nature to try to offend anyone, even if I don't like you. I'm not mean-spirited. I get angry. I speak my mind, and sometimes that's not always kind, but it's always truthful. But sometimes the truth should be meted with more kindness and gentleness, and other times it warrants exactly bluntness. So, unapologetically, I am who I am. I'm always growing, I'm always developing, I'm always learning. However, I do not apologize for being me. But in perspective, and perspectives are key in every situation and circumstance, because you have your perspective. Whenever there's a disagreement or uncomfortableness or a major change in the energy and in the atmosphere, there's your perspective, but there's also everyone else's. And everybody could have a completely different perspective of the same situation and circumstance. And so that's what I gleaned from what I was shown, that it's a completely different perspective. And that's fine. One of the hardest I say the hardest things in life that we have to conquer, or to, I don't want to use the word assimilate, because you don't want to change who you are, but adapt or adjust, perhaps. Is relationships or interactions with other human beings. It has the potential to be the most complicated situation you've ever encountered. And quite often you don't even know why. So I think in this particular case, in my stillness, the Ruach HaKodesh was kind of trying to get me to see that even though in the real life situation that I was reflecting on, I had done nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. This other person who was involved has their own entirely different perspective for their own reasons. And it's not necessarily a case of I'm right, you're wrong, or they're right and you're wrong. You could both be right, and you can both be wrong, and you can both be both. Everything is about perspectives and intention, of course, because the intent behind all actions and behaviors ultimately is what counts most. I could recount a situation where there was someone I cared greatly for who is a very independent person by nature and spirit, everything about him, but needed some assistance, but I did not know how to properly offer to him without him either feeling emasculated or insulted, because this person was a former mentor, teacher, that it was out of place for me to offer assistance or guidance, where at one point in time he was the one who guided me and gave me assistance and helped me to grow. But anyway, it is highly likely that I went about it the wrong ways, even though I tried to be as careful, a tiptoe, and as gentle to say the things that I needed to say to him, and to get him to consider a different point of view and perspective on some things, to open up, or to get him to be open to a healing of a wound that I could clearly see in him, that he definitely wanted to keep hidden and didn't want to acknowledge, but it was hindering or holding him back. Even if he didn't know it, it was like a mortal wound that continued to bleed, and until it was bound and dealt with, it would always be a wound there. And sometimes when we have emotional, spiritual wounds, they hold us back or hinder us from being able to be our best versions of ourselves until we face that, address and dress that wound so that it can properly heal. And sometimes when it's something that's very personal, we want to heal all alone and by ourselves and away from everyone. I do my best healing that way, but I'm not truly alone. I've got a lot of spiritual beings constantly around me, and they aid tremendously in my growth, as well as I go into nature and animals and other forms of spirit that help me to grow and to balance out my energy. But that's a whole nother other. But this